Friends, Trevor Hudson poses a simple question. If someone steals something precious or valuable from you and then apologizes and asks you to forgive him or her, but keeps it for themselves, not returning it or offering to replace it, how would you feel? Would you accept the apology? Would you feel that he or she is genuinely sorry? Probably not. An important ingredient is missing: restitution, restoration, making amends. In Leviticus 6, verse 1 to 7, the passage is very clear that within ancient Israelite culture, if one realized one was guilty of something that damaged a relationship with another person, then restoration was necessary. In this passage, interestingly, there's no mention made of making an apology. There's no mention of asking for forgiveness. All that is asked of a person in this passage is firstly, obviously, a recognition of their guilt, a restoration of what has been lost or broken, and then added to that a ritual offering as an outward religious sign of reconnecting or restoring that person's relationship, not just with the injured person, but also with the divine. It's a recognition that our broken relationships with others often leave us feeling disconnected from the divine. One could say disconnected from life itself sometimes. And so the ancient writer of Leviticus clearly recognized that apologies and requests for forgiveness can be very cheap and empty and meaningless when not backed up with action. What is required, according to that passage, is a clear and unambiguous effort to make amends. And that brings us to step 9 on the 12-step program. Last week's sermon was entitled Mending Fences Part 1, in which we explored step 8, which invited us first to make a list of all the people we have hurt or harmed, and secondly, to become willing to make amends. If you're going to mend a broken fence, first you have to recognize which fences are broken. And then you have to have the will to actually mend them. That was step 8. Step 9 is now a commitment to follow through on that intention. And it reads, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. And so step 8 was the preparation to make amends. Step 9 is the commitment to actually do so. The Gospel of Luke has a wonderful story of a person expressing the courage to make amends, because making amends takes an enormous amount of courage. It is the story of Zacchaeus, the dodgy tax collector, who had amassed great wealth for himself by overcharging the people of Jericho in their taxes. Upon meeting Jesus, and without any prompting from Jesus, he is spontaneously moved to make amends. We read in verse 8, but he stood up and said to Jesus, if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I will repay back 4 times the amount. Trevor Hudson writes that Zacchaeus' new spiritual experience, having encountered Jesus, having been accepted by him and called by name by Jesus, was then accompanied by a deep desire for restitution, to make restitution, to put right what he had done wrong. He knew that there was no such thing as a private salvation deal with God. He had done wrong things to people, and he needed to put them right. And so Trevor writes, restitution begins when we make a conscious decision to face those whom we have wronged. And these people might include our spouses, our parents, children, brothers, sisters, close friends. They may also include people we don't even like. those with whom we don't communicate, and even some whom we consider our enemies. Step 9 invites us to go to them, if it is at all possible, to acknowledge the hurt we have caused, and to explain our desire to make amends. Last week, I shared how early in his ministry, Trevor's tendency to overwork and overcommit and his constant absence from home had caused hurt and damage in his marriage to his wife, Debbie. And in making amends, he writes how he sat down with her, apologized for neglecting their relationship, and then explained his intention to put things right. He suggested to her that if she were willing, that he would take her out every Monday night from then on. And depending on the budget, it would either be for a milkshake or for a pizza. It's a practice, he says, that he continues. He has continued through the years, even up to today. And he comments that in this instance, making restitution has in fact been a joy. It's been a lot of fun. But sometimes he acknowledges it may not all be enjoyable. He tells of a friend who had a gambling addiction and had defrauded the company where he worked of large sums of money. And when he began to awaken, the friend began to awaken to the spiritual dimension of his life, he realized that he needed to come clean and to put right what he had done wrong. He spoke to his boss, admitted his wrongdoing, and then offered to repay the money with interest on a monthly basis. It was a long, hard, and costly journey, but having done it, he came to experience a freedom and a serenity that he'd never known before. Despite the difficulty, it was worth it. Trevor acknowledges, however, that not all our attempts to make amends will necessarily have a resolution or a happy ending. Some people may be too angry with us and therefore not receptive. Others may have been too deeply hurt to want to re-engage with us. And in these instances, he suggests that one can only take solace in the fact that one has tried one's best. Step 9 recognizes the limitations of making direct amends, and it asks only that we make amends wherever possible. Excuse me. In some instances, a person may have died or live elsewhere or no longer be traceable. In such cases, we can only make what can be called indirect amends by committing ourselves to living a life of integrity as much as possible from that moment on. Committing ourselves to becoming less selfish, less controlling, more open and more loving. Trevor suggests that in doing so, we are saying to those we have hurt and to those to whom we may not have immediate access, I recognize that I've hurt you, but through my new way of life, I'm seeking to make it up to you indirectly. Lastly, step 9 suggests that there are times when making direct amends is in fact not advisable. It says that we are to make direct amends wherever possible to those we have harmed. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cough at the moment. We're to make amends wherever possible to those we have harmed, except when to do so would injure them or others. In other words, if there's any possibility that we will cause even greater harm, we must think twice before we go ahead. It would be wrong to, for example, to expose somebody to even more suffering just so that we can ease our own conscience. Obviously, this will require being mindful of other people and especially innocent parties and the impact of bringing something potentially damaging out into the open, perhaps for them and maybe even their family members. So much more could be said regarding the example, for example, the right timing of when to make amends, the right approach, and even the right measures. And of course, those complicated scenarios when we might end up doing more harm than good. All of these will ultimately, however, be determined by our attempt to put ourselves in the other person's shoes. This is about moving beyond concern for self and about asking what will be best, most helpful, and most healing for the ones I have harmed. But maybe we are still not yet ready to make amends. Trevor suggests that the best way to start is to start with the small things and to build momentum from there. Small victories might give us the courage to tackle some of the bigger issues. He also points out to us that the big book of AA reminds us again of the huge benefits of restitution. It says that when we make amends, we will not regret the past, nor wish to close the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will suddenly realize that God, the great wisdom of life, is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. So may God bless you again as I leave these thoughts with you again as some food for thought for you, for us all to consider on our own individual journeys. God bless. Amen.